All right, everybody, welcome back to Chin Music, a baseball podcast. This is episode 4. Andrew mentioned, joined by Andrew Lukuski, and it's been a while for sure, but luckily, I think we're both glad that finals are over for our spring semester, so we're happy to be back and hopefully going to be uploading a lot more now. But
Absolutely. Yeah. Now baseball's the primary focus of our lives.
yeah. So I think what we wanted to do today is we want to go over kind of the last couple of weeks for the Mets and the Phillies, how their last series have gone, how they've done, what the outlook is going to look like them for the next month as we progress through the remaining 75% of baseball. And then we're also going to talk a little about some MLB Roundtable. Two managers got fired this week, with Bud Black and Derek Shelton getting the boot by the Rockies and the Pirates respectively, and cover some other things going on. Again, we've reached the point where um, with 25% into the season, a lot of things are starting to take shape, and it's not so much hot streaks so much as some real storylines are starting to form. So yeah, let's get into it. The Mets have just wrapped up a series with the Chicago Cubs. They take two out of the three, so win the series, and we'll be playing the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight for a three-game series. They get to face Paul Skeens, so that's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. Over the past couple weeks, they've done well. I wouldn't say they've played perfect. They definitely have not played as good as I've accustomed to seeing them play over the past the first month of the baseball. The National Series, which came right after episode 3, was a roller coaster of a series. I don't even want to talk about that series. But they managed to split that. Then they played two series against the Diamondbacks, winning one series, losing another. And I believe they lost series against the Cardinals. I believe that's the ones off the top of my head. But overall, I think the things I want to highlight is you can't really complain. They sit at 26 and 15. They're still in first place in the NL East. They just because they don't have the best record in baseball, it doesn't necessarily mean press the panic button. Although some of the losses have been pretty excruciating. I do want to note that out of the last 8 losses that they've had since we filmed our last episode, 6 of them have been by 1 run. So that just kind of goes to show that it's been pretty painful when they do lose because they've come very close. Even the loss the other day to the Cubs, it was a 1 run game, and Jeff McNeil pinch hit and walked to set up Lindor, Soto, Alonso. So 1 on, 0 outs, 1 run game, and Lindor promptly hits a comebacker to the pitcher for double play, and they lose that game. So that I was driving home when I was watching that game, and that made me lose my mind. But again, listen, they won the series. They took care of business on Mother's Day. So can't be too unhappy. For the franchise, I watch this team every year, and they're never good except for a couple of years. So this is one of the years where they actually appear to start good. So I can't be too mad.
My for my and I haven't watched enough to know if it's still a problem. But I thought of this question not too long after we recorded our last episode. Um, who who right now for you, if you have to pick somebody to fill in for the role, if and to correct me if I'm wrong, if Diaz doesn't come back to the full, lockdown games over guy that he's been, who because eventually somebody's going to need to, you know, step up. I don't know if Carlos Mendoza would go to a committee kind of thing, but who would be your preferred candidate? Because there's a lot of guys who I think are really good in the bullpen, but you have to take into the factor of closing a game. And so which one of the guys that you watch day in and day out has that sort of X factor?
Yeah, the perfect name that comes to me is Reed Garrett.
I was
Reed
gonna say
Garrett
him.
he made his debut last year. He really started off his career on fire. Well, he's been around for a while, but he started his Mets career off on fire. Definitely having if it wasn't a scoreless streak, he had a very low ERA to start off his Mets tenure before ultimately kind of faltering. But this year he's picked up right where he's left off. ERA of the season is 1.08. He's striking out over a guy per inning, limiting the walks. And he's kind of been that guy that Mendy's put in high leverage. Not necessarily the ninth inning, but if there's runners on base and some of the other guys aren't doing their job so well, Reed Garrett's there to kind of be that fireman. So in the event that Diaz is removed from the closer's role, he was removed a little bit last year. It's kind of a reset. I don't think he's been catastrophic enough where they're looking to do that anytime soon. But me personally, I wouldn't mind Reed Garrett getting some ninth inning opportunities. I definitely there the bullpen, like you said, there's a lot of guys that there's reason to have faith in, even if they haven't been perfect as of late. Obviously, the AJ Minter injury happened since we recorded our last episode. So that's another really proven arm that will be sorely missed in that bullpen. But Reed Garrett's been really good. Huascar Brazaban, he's not necessarily a ninth inning guy. Sometimes he's the opener. Sometimes he's just kind of a middle innings guy, but he's been very effective. Kranick hasn't been as good. And Ryan Stanek has always kind of been up and down, but I would have to say Reed Garrett right now. He's been a
I
really nice arm.
figured I was going to snatch him up for my fantasy team. Actually, I saw he's had a pretty good stat line this year. He feels like he's got the vibe, so to speak. He's got that kind of crazy eyed energy that feels like he could go in at any time and just kind of lock the
Yeah.
game down.
Yeah, for sure. If you see a picture of Reed Garrett, he definitely looks like he's an intense guy. Like,
He's got the Papelbon look. He's got like the
yeah,
Jonathan
he's got like
Papelbon
this
look.
the psycho closer mentality that you need.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So another thing I wanted to touch on, the starting pitching has been super good still. Griffin Canning just had a great start on Mother's Day. He's really, we I've already given him his flowers on this podcast, but it's been even he's even surpassed what my expectations for him after the first couple of starts. Because as I saw him pitch, I was like, okay, like I have faith in Stearns, I have faith in the lab. He'll probably be a pretty good mid rotation starter, or even just a good back end guy. But with every start, he's really it's fascinating to watch him pitch because for if you were to look at the metrics on his fastball might be like the pound for pound the worst fastball in baseball, and that's not like by shape or the movement profile by it. Like it's a college level fastball. So it's remarkable that he's managed to have as much success as he had with that being a pitch that he throws 30% of the time. So I don't know how it works, but I that's why I'm not hired by Stearns to be in the pitching lab. Those guys know what they're doing clearly. So he's been a revelation for this rotation and the rest of the rotation in general. Tyler McGill has cooled off a little bit, but Kodai Senga again has been nails every time he's made a healthy start. Clay Holmes has made the progression from closer to starter. David Peterson has been effective. They've all been effective. And remember, you still have Sean Manaea coming back soon, Frankie Montas coming back soon, and even some of the kids in AAA. They have some real prospects in the on the farm on the pitching side for probably the first time for me since that 2015 2016 era where they were bringing guys in like Syndergaard, Harvey, Matz, Wheeler, who's one of your favorite guys. But not to say that any of these guys are on that level. I definitely wouldn't put them there, but definitely a step above what we've seen in recent years, where like the best pitching prospect we had come up was Justin Dunn or even David Peterson. I think nobody knew was going to be an ace when he came up, but some of these guys are really exciting. So the pitching's been nice to see.
I feel because that's not the first time I've heard you describe a Mets pitcher as nails. Um, that uh, that means that you, as a Mets fan, and therefore the greater Mets fan base, officially claims Lenny Dykstra as one of your own because he refers to himself as nails. Um,
I
so
think that has transcended Lenny Dykstra. I am not claiming Lenny Dykstra. Great player, terrible person. You will not see me with Lenny Dykstra on the back of my jersey anytime soon.
it's one
That's
of the
for sure.
first of all, very few people that have played for both the Phillies and the Mets, but it's also even of that very small pool as it is one of probably one of one that both fan bases will kind of push to the other fan base and be like, no, he's all yours, because nobody wants any responsibility of that.
Yeah, he's definitely a character. You see a lot of guys after they retire, just to name a couple: Kurt Schilling, Aubrey Huff. Um, they certainly have their own opinions. And I guess you're entitled to. You definitely have to have a certain certain personality to succeed in some of these tough markets. But definitely not my kind of person, that's for sure.
No, that gets us that got us off track. That got us off track. But I heard you say nails, and I've heard Lenny Dykstra refer to himself as nails. When there was during, I think it was during the COVID season getting delayed, that he went on a Twitter rampage and just did like daily videos, a minute or minute and a half of him just talking. And he would, hey guys, it's Nails coming at you again from wherever the hell in the world he was. So that brought back the memory when you said Kodai Senga was Nails. I was like, oh, let me like strike.
Oh, yeah. So speaking of Mets star outfielders, I want to talk a little bit about Juan Soto again, who has had a nice. He's had an up and down past week. He had that game where he hit two home runs, and then followed that up promptly with so he had three home runs in the past two games, which was nice to see. And then he followed that up with an 0 for 9 skid, again grounding out to kind of seal that game after Lindor and got into that double play. So the flashes are there. I'm still. It's going to take a pretty rough stretch for me to even think about hitting the panic button. The plate discipline's there. You see it. He definitely takes more strikes than he swings at balls, which you make what you want of that approach. But the eye's there. He's hitting the ball hard, so it's tough to be too super mad at him. And again, he has those games where he reminds you just how good he is. But I think all of Mets fans are looking to see him put it together and do it consistently, just because that's what's really going to take this team to the next level. That's what separates Juan Soto from just guys that have hot streaks, right? Is that he's able to do that over 162. So I think we're just looking to see him hopefully kind of turn the page and put it together, so that he can truly kind of complete that extremely dangerous 1-2-3 with him, Lindor, and Alonso, especially because Alonso's already been tearing the cover off the ball. Even Lindor usually has a slow start in April. He's been mashing, and really setting the tone every game. So I'm looking forward to seeing them all hit well together and hopefully take this team to an even better level, because really, again, the pitching is overperformed. The bullpen certainly hasn't been perfect, but it's not been bad either. So that's really what's the last thing that's stopping them from kind of entering what I would call Dodgers level stratosphere.
I think you need that too because and you can come at me with your, Mets fandom. There is an inevitable regression to the mean of some of these pitchers, I think. And
Yeah.
that is not a like I am not saying that the pendulum is going to swing entirely in the opposite direction. That is not what I'm saying at all. But I I don't think any pitching staff is like poised to have three guys finishing like top 10 Cy Young voting. Or and a bullpen ERA. If I don't even know what the Mets bullpen ERA is. If you take out Edwin Diaz, it's probably below 3. Um, so I think you're going to need the lineup to compensate for that inevitable regression at some point. Whether it's a slow regression where guys just kind of fade back to where they should be, or there's a couple week stretch where it just totally does swing the opposite direction, and the Mets are going to need to win games 9-7, 10-8, and just out hit other teams. So that's my outsider perspective on why that's in it outside of just because right now obviously they're playing quite well without him being the guy that signed a $750 million contract. But there's going to be a point where they are going to need him, and you'd rather have him in the midst of being Juan Soto than just still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely tend to agree, and I think most Mets fans would tend to agree that as great as his pitching staff's been, it's silly to think that they're going to keep this up for a full stretch. Like again, Griffin Canning's been great. Griffin Canning also has an ERA of like mid twos. If he does that, if he has that in September, I would be floored. Even Clay Holmes, I think you're going to have to expect a out of the wide range of outcomes, I think your optimistic outcome for him is probably a mid three ERA, hopefully like 3.5 would be pretty nice. Senga, I think, has an ERA of like in the ones. Even him, you're looking at like mid to late twos, I think, and that's a great season. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, like just the for so many games of this season, the pitching has been so lights out that it's impossible to do this, even with the lab and everything. So and the
I
Mets
think
knew
a,
that.
I think a good like a good indicator of that is that if you had a starting pitcher that went 6 innings and 3 runs every start for the entire season, their ERA would be 4.5. And I think any franchise would take a guy guaranteed to go 6 innings, 3 runs every single time. And a ERA of 4.5 is twice of what some of the guys in the current starting rotation have, almost approaching triple what Kodai Senga has at the moment. Not quite triple, but 2.5 times. So just that I feel like that number right there puts it into a perspective of just how much better than I don't even want to call 4.5 league average because if because a quality start, I don't know. For argument's sake, we'll call it league average. How much better than league average all of the starters have been. So it's just like I said, it's inevitable that they're going to trend a little bit more towards that direction. Whether how close they get to that, kind of average 4.5 ERA mark, I don't know. But
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure. So, I mean, we can only cross my fingers and hope that we end up continuing that stretch for as long as we can. But yeah, it's gonna eventually regress to the mean. One more thing I wanted to talk about before we swap to the Phillies and eventually the MLB as a whole. A report by everyone's most accurate favorite reporter, Bob Nightingale, said that the Mets have, quote, checked in with Luis Robert Jr. I believe it was John Heyman, when kind of asked to corroborate that, said that he hasn't heard anything specific, but that he kind of confirmed that at least that they've checked in and asked on him. The report by Bob said that the White Sox would want Blade Tidwell, who is the Mets, I believe, is number 5 prospect. He's one of their AAA pitchers. Definitely has some promise as a mid to back rotation arm. But my thoughts on that, I think I definitely would take a chance on it. Like I feel you're already as of this year, and I understand that a lot of these guys are on in the rotation at least are on 1 year deals. They're gonna have to re up again next year, but like there's so many promising arms in this system. Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong almost threw a 7 inning perfect game with 13 strikeouts the other day. Nolan McLean has really been amazing, and his stuff looks really good. So just those guys, just off the top of my head, are guys that will be candidates to be mainstays in this rotation for a long time. So I don't mind dealing one of the guys that you're not completely in love with. I'm sure they have high hopes for Blade Tidwell, but I definitely wouldn't call him the best pitching prospect in the Mets system. I wouldn't mind dealing him for somebody like Luis Robert that is his upside is still there. I like you don't finish top 10 in MVP voting a couple years ago and forget how to hit, right? I do feel that some of it is the fact that he plays for a team that is as stuck in purgatory as the White Sox are. I think when you're a young player and you're forced to be on that team, knowing that there's not a chance in hell you are going to sniff the postseason for the considerable future, that impacts you, and you have a little bit less to kind of show out for, whether you like it or not. Knowing that you're not going to be in the playoffs and really kind of experience the pinnacles of the game has an effect on people in that clubhouse in general. So I definitely would identify him as somebody who just needs to change of scenery, wants to play for a winning team, and I think that would really kind of motivate him and hopefully get him back in the swing of things, especially just with a better organization, and an organization that knows how to bring out the best in him. Not to say that the White Sox are completely incompetent, but I would bet you that, just from a organizational structural standpoint, that the Mets would have some better options and ideas on how to get through to him.
yeah, I would agree. Uh, I I feel that I'm not as high on Luis Robert as some people are. I think certainly. think that he's better than what he's been playing. I think the atmosphere of where he is has an effect. I think anybody who has any job could relate if you were hired out of college and told you will not get promoted or get a raise for the next 5 years. You'd be like, well, then what am I doing here? Why would I give any extra effort? So I certainly think he's got more to prove. Um, I don't know. I get things wrong. I might be totally wrong. I don't know. I don't know much about Blake Tidwell. If he's, I just based on general knowledge of organizations, like a fifth ranked prospect, I feel like is a fair baseline for that. I don't know how many years he's got left. Is it this one and one more? I guess he's still in his rookie deal. I don't know. I just package wise, I think that seems fair. I'm sure they'd want him and some some guy from the low single A or something like that.
Yeah, I'm looking now. So Luis Robert would be eligible to be an unrestricted free agent in 2028. So
Wow.
he's
Okay.
got
All right.
he's got
2 years.
2026 and 2027 still. Yeah, in addition to this year, so he's got some control. Definitely, and that's definitely a kind of Stearns got to trade for. Is he's not a big fan of rentals at all. So if he's gonna part with some prospect capital, it would be for somebody under club control, especially because the Mets could use a center fielder with Jose Siri being out and Jesse Winker is now out. So it's kind of just Tyrone Taylor is stuck there um, with Jose Azocar until Drew Gilbert. I guess like until they think he's ready, and even he's no guarantee, right? So I definitely
Mhm.
wouldn't mind if they wanted to swing a deal for that. Um, I'm always a fan of the upside play, and especially for a team that could definitely use some if they were to get a center fielder that plays nearly as good as MVP season Luis Robert. Like I'm a fan of that all day. So
Seems reasonable. Yeah,
yeah,
I would think the same thing. You can have Johan Rojas.
that's all you, man. He's not even. I don't think he's having a bad season, right? I thought he was doing all right.
He's he's above serviceable, actually. I don't even know his um current stats. Actually, I think he was. Um, Now you got me curious. Yeah, he's playing fine this year. It's in two. Yeah. Oh, he's hitting 284 actually. All right, fair enough. All right, and that'll be my segue into my notes about the Phillies. I don't have nearly as much praise as you do because when I praise them, they play poorly. So I'll start off with a couple of my good things. So they won after winning the Sunday night game yesterday in Cleveland. They won 5 straight series, which is something they didn't do all of last year. Um, this season they won 95 games, so definitely happy to see that against some good teams. So I think Cleveland's a pretty good team. Arizona's a good team. Chicago's the good team. All those three are, I don't want to say more than likely to make the playoffs. They're at least two of those teams are probably going to be in the playoffs. Um, and then the Nationals in Tampa. Eh, I mean, good they took care of business. That's all I'm gonna. That's all I can say. I still have plenty of concerns about the bats in the lineup because I watch day in and day out opportunities where they should be winning games by double-digit runs, and I see Nick Castellanos bend over and stick his bat out at a slider that's 4 feet outside of the zone, and it drives me nuts because he always comes up with runners on base because the guys in front of him get on base, and he's that's got to get fixed. And I know it won't get fixed because he's a free swinging guy and he's stubborn, and that's not going to go away. But I would like to see just even a slightly better pitch selection by him. And the same thing goes for JT too, actually. Um, and and his season so far, and he, for all I know, he might turn it around um, a bit more. But uh, I have to think about him walking. I have to think about this because this is his free agent year. I don't want him anywhere near the Phillies after this year. I I I am very happy that the Phillies signed him for they've had him for 6 years now, 6 or 7 years now, I guess, and he's been very good. He's he's too old, and like his slash line this year's a 242 batting average, a 320 on base percentage, and a 379 slugging percentage. That's 700 OPS, but the slugging percentage has to come up a little bit for me. I think he's just not. He was never a big home run hitter, but he's not hitting the doubles. He's not getting on base the way he should. Um, so those are the two biggest guys that I'm worried about in the lineup. I think Harper's having a worse season than both of those, but I'm not going to waste my time talking about him because I'm not super worried about Harper picking it up a little bit. Um, so my overall thoughts of the offense since we last recorded is that it's certainly better and they are certainly winning more games, but there's much I would like to see improved. Um, I have since we last recorded too. There's been a report by um, local Phillies guy. I think it was Matt Gelb that had a little something in an article for the Athletic that they have conversed a little bit with the Cardinals on Ryan Helsley, um, but the primary return that the Cardinals wanted was Mick Abel. Um, I have I have multiple thoughts on this, but as an outsider who does not, I'm sure you do not watch Phillies AAA games. I watch Mick Abel start every week. I like I got I'm a big I've gotten myself into being a bit of a prospect guru over the last year, so I've watched him more. Um, knowing just outside situations, I'm curious what you think of that return. And it was not just Mick Abel; it was Mick Abel, and it was some you know outfielder in Clearwater or something like that.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this, I know a little bit about Mick Abel. Obviously, he was a first round draft pick 4 years ago out of high school, and he's definitely struggled the last couple of years, but this year he's done really well. In the about eight or so starts he's had at Lehigh Valley. I'm looking at it right now, 2.5 ERA, over a strikeout per inning. He's really limited the walks, which is a thing that's been
That
starkly
was a big
different.
thing for him. That was a big thing for him. Yeah,
Yeah, so he's having a nice season. I think that maybe not as heralded as he once was, but I think you're still looking at a valuable contributor to a team that can be up this year, if not in the next month or two. My concern with that though is I think you don't have room for him, right? Like we already are starting to see, and I know this is somebody you want to talk about a little bit later. Like Taiwan Walker is going to be in the relief because like he's going to be in the bullpen because you don't have room for him. And then again, when Andrew Painter eventually comes up midseason, he's not going to go in the bullpen. We've already had this conversation, right? He's going to start. So you're looking at a team that has an an embarrassment of riches on the starting rotation front, where every single day they have a guy that is, I think, is objectively above average going at worst, and at best you have Zach Wheeler who's a Cy Young candidate. So you have guys going every day. Definitely a rotation that's one of the best in baseball. So I don't know where you're going to put him, and my concern also is that, um, again, these Phillies aren't getting any younger, right? This may not be their last year in their window. But
it's the last year for some guys. There
it's
is
the
going to
last year
be
for
a
some guys.
major overhaul if they don't win this year.
Yeah, I think this is the last you're going to see of the core that you've become accustomed to seeing the Phillies roll out for the past half decade or so. So if I were Dave Dombrowski, I'd obviously you kind of want to work your magic and limit the return you're giving up. But for a guy like Ryan Helsley, who hasn't had a fantastic season, he's had a okay year. He's 3.21 ERA is good. WHIP of 1.6 is not, but seven saves
Mm.
in 14 games. And you know, throughout his entire career, he's been for the most part, especially the last 3 years, he's been an elite closer. So I think it's very obvious that the Phillies bullpen is their Achilles heel, assuming that the bats kind of round into shape eventually. And that's not going to go away. There is no rookie Orion Kerkering coming through that door. So I feel like you got to do the best you can to add to this team at the deadline and make a push because as the Phillies have showed you time and time again, it doesn't matter if you're the first seed in the playoffs or if you're a wild card team. Anybody's capable of beating anybody in these playoffs. So it's your job as the GM to go balls to the wall and go get as many guys as you can to make this team competitive and built for the playoffs. So, long
I,
story short, I think that's a trigger you got to pull.
really? Okay. So as I mentioned before, I asked you the question. I've become a little bit. I've become more of a. I pay more attention to prospects now than I used to. This is one that I wouldn't do, and there's a couple reasons. First of all, um, so Helsley would come in and obviously be the closer. Um, Helsley's having a fairly comparable season to Jose Alvarado, who has a 2.80 ERA, 6 saves, not seven, and a 1.1 WHIP in 19 innings pitched. Now, obviously, you can make the argument that Helsley comes in, Alvarado gets knocked down a spot and pitches in the seventh or eighth, or they can, they take the ninth in tandem a little bit based on the matchups. Alvarado with the hard throwing lefty could be a better matchup at some point. But I don't. I think Alvarado's better suited for the ninth. Um, so I find I and on um, on the side of Mick Abel, um, I I I am very aware of his past 3 years. Before this year, his past 3 years were not great. His first year, his first professional season was, I think, pretty good. It was actually not pretty good. It was good, and then he had 3 years um, of not great. Last year, especially last year, was not good at all. I think he finished with an ERA over five. This year, he's been very, very good. Um, and I don't know for a fact. I'm fairly certain that Ranger Suarez is walking at the end of the season. He's going to cost a little bit too much money, and I think the Phillies would be better suited spending that money elsewhere. So you're gonna be down a very, very good starting pitcher. Obviously, if Painter comes up and is the Painter that the Phillies are hoping and prospect analysts seem to think he would be, that's much less of a loss. But I don't want to depend on that. Um, and I think having a guy who's seemingly ready now. Obviously, I would like to see this kept up for another, couple of starts before I'm ready to declare that he's ready to come up in the majors. But I think having somebody like that who's still young, he's still 22 or 23, is a very valuable asset to have. Um, and I don't know if trading for half a season of a closer is is the right move for him. In addition to the fact that there's been some reporting from Matt Gelb and Todd Zalecki, both Phillies writers, that they're considering moving Abel to the bullpen to come out as like a 1 or 2 inning hard firing righty because he's a hard thrower. He throws 95 to 97. He's got a good cutter, and um, they think he might fit the profile a little bit better, and that might help them limit the walks a little bit, or might help him limit the walks a little bit, which he's done anyway this year. But they think letting him just kind of empty the tank with 30-ish pitches might help him with that. And I'm 9 times out of 10 totally against that. I think a starter is a starter, um, especially when he's in AAA and is pitching well. And AAA was a first round draft pick. Um, I'm not against it, and I'd be very curious how that were to work. And I think that combination of keeping Alvarado as the closer and Abel working as a seventh inning medium to high leverage guy once he's accustomed to it could work, especially because you have Matt Strom to supplement that a little bit, who's been better as of late. Still not great, but he's certainly been better, and he's a guy that can pitch in high leverage situations. So I wouldn't be mad. Like I would not be upset and think that the Phillies overpaid if they were to pull the trigger and do that deal. But it was if I was in the GM office, or in Dave Dombrowski's case, the president's office, and he kind of just does whatever he feels. I don't know if I would, and I think I'm in the minority in that.
So I recognize your point, and that's interesting of what you were saying about them moving Abel to the bullpen. Um, what I would counter with that is that you don't know how Abel's going to play in the postseason, right? Like for instance, I'll bring up an example from last year who they did this really similarly with Jackson Jobe on the Tigers. His first he came up in September and he pitched in the playoffs. And Jackson Jobe's going to be a very very good pitcher in Major League Baseball for a long time. But in that cameo that you saw last year, the poor kid, he's 22 years old. He's a year or two older than we are, and he's getting thrust into a stadium that's packed to the gills at 40,000 screaming at him. And some guys just they can't get thrown in the fire like that. And for teams that are win now, especially the teams like the Phillies that are trying to they're trying to make playoff pushes every year and just finally get to the promised land. That's something that I is would be a luxury to have for sure, having a young pitcher come up like that. But I don't know if necessarily um, you would want him to come in and immediately be that setup guy. Whereas I think Helsley, and I think how I would do it if I were Rob Thompson and they were both on my team, Helsley and Alvarado, I'd probably do a matchup thing. I think the Dodgers do that pretty well with Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates. Granted, those guys are both like been in the league for a really long time, but I think you're able to play matchups. And Alvarado's had stints where he's not always been the ninth inning guy, so I don't think it's necessarily a comfort thing. I think he's probably fine pitching in either. I think if it came down to it, as of right now, I think Alvarado's the better pitcher. But the Phillies bullpen is certainly not deep. There's guys that are talented, but certainly not a deep group of guys. Um, so having those two back as a two-headed monster, especially with Strom as the bridge, um, that really gives you flexibility, and I think more flexibility to compete in terms of this year than simply having McAble pitch. Now, of course, you're sacrificing that short term. Then you got to figure out a Ranger replacement and so on and so forth. But I think the starting rotation is good enough that with or without Ranger, it's still at minimum a very good unit and potentially elite, especially like you said, if Painter comes up and pitches really well. So there's no right answer. Like you said, you could be wrong, I could be wrong. At the end of the day, it's all speculation, right? But
It's
I
one of the
think,
deals that looks great if they win the World Series and Helsley's throwing the final pitch.
yeah,
It looks terrible if they don't. And McAble comes up next year for the Cardinals and finishes top 10 in rookie of the year voting. Then it looks like an awful deal. So it's part of it feels like a no-win situation because not that not that those two things are mutually exclusive. Phillies could win the World Series and McAble pitches incredibly well next year in the card for the Cardinals. Those are not mutually exclusive. I think it's more likely that the Phillies don't win the World Series and McAble pitches really well because just the odds of any one team winning the World Series at one given time are not exorbitantly high. McAble's going to be a Major League Baseball pitcher at some point within the next year, and I think that he'll pitch. I think that he's going to pitch pretty well. I don't think he's going to. He's not going to come up and light up the league. I don't. I think that first round, insanely good starter profile is probably gone for him now, just because it's been so long and he's had some struggles. Um, I don't think it's out of the question that he'd be a on the lower end of a good number two or a really solid number three starter. Um, and also another smaller reason, not a huge one, that I worry about getting rid of the pitching depth is, and the baseball gods might curse me for questioning Zach Wheeler. He's getting older, and I know that he's just seems to get better every year. At some point, the arm is going to go, and I don't mean he's going to have to get Tommy John surgery. At some point, he's not going to be able to throw 98 miles an hour into the sixth or seventh inning of a baseball game. Aaron Nola has already showed for stretches that he is getting older, and his fastball is averaging 92 maybe this year, and he still controls it really well. So that's what's getting him by. But these guys are getting older, and I think Taiwan Walker's got one more year after this, but that's a big rotation depth guy that's going to be gone. Ideally, if they can trade that contract at some point. Um, but if not, then the end of next season they're going to be out. Walker and Suarez would have left the year before. Um, and I don't. starting pitching depth is, I feel, the one, not the one area, one of the areas that like I think you need to sort of covet those guys. And I don't, and while they have enough, I think like I certainly if one guy were to get hurt, with the exception if it was Zach Wheeler, if one of the other four in the rotation were to get hurt right now, I would not ring any alarm bells because of the guys they have. But if two guys were to get hurt, then it starts to be a problem. And I think that Abel could provide something next season. This is assuming that he would not transition to some relief role and pitch well. And to your point about the stadium thing, uh, certainly a concern for me. Um, but proven guys last year in the bullpen choked terribly, and so relievers in the postseason are like rolling dice on a craps table. You never know what you're gonna get with some of those guys. Um, so that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we want to transition. Oh my God. We're gonna transition now to MLB Roundup. As we mentioned earlier, two managers that have been around in baseball for quite a long time, Bud Black and Derek Shelton, have both been fired by the Rockies and Pirates respectively. Bud Black, I can't believe it took him this long. I feel like he's been managing for like what, 10 years? I'm gonna go look this up actually.
Yeah, he's been
Um,
around for. While you're looking it up, I have my thoughts on this. The I'm surprised that it took him this long. I think it's two different situations. Um, I think that the Pirates are not a good baseball team. They have some good guys. I think they are. I think they, in the very essence of the word, are underperforming this year. I don't think they are underperforming drastically. I do not think they should be first in the NL Central. I think they are better than a 13-win team, though, right now. I do not think the Rockies are a better team than they are playing right now. And I know that at some point you as an organization just need to just make a move for the sake, not necessarily for the sake of making a move, but making a move to let people know, hey, we know this is bad. So it was an interesting time to fire Bud Black because the front office knew the Rockies were going to be bad. They were bad last year. They didn't go out and get anybody. They were, of course, going to be bad. The Pirates have one of the premier pitchers in baseball at the moment. O'Neill Cruz has been playing much better lately. Brian Reynolds has been underperforming a little bit, but he's still a perennial 275 hitter, 15, 20 home runs, hits his doubles. Um, and Mitch Keller too. Mitch Keller is a very good starting pitcher. So the Pirates, I think, are genuinely underperforming where they should be, and I think that's part of the reason why Shelton got the boot. Um, the timing of the Rockies one felt interesting to me though.
yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's the biggest my biggest reaction is like, why now, right? Because like, and I looked it up, so he's been a manager since this is his ninth season, or maybe this is his 10th, and he's been around for 9 seasons.
Nine full
um
ones, yeah, whatever.
yeah, so his tenure began in 2017. They won they made the playoffs in his first 2 seasons, and then they haven't been back since. They haven't had a winning season since those first 2 years. Um, so it just doesn't make sense. And again, it's not necessarily his fault. I don't. It remains to be seen whether he's a bad manager. I remember him being a manager. I forget what his other job was before that, but he was a manager. I want to say Padres, maybe. It's irrelevant. Point is, he's been around the game for a long time. Certainly an experienced manager, experienced skipper. Um, and the reason why the Rockies suck is not because of Bud Black. I can tell you that much. It's because the Rockies suck, and their front office doesn't know what they're doing. So, I don't know. It's definitely it feels like an appeasement move, scapegoat. Say like, hey, we're gonna do a culture change or whatever.
We know
Um,
things are bad. This is the only thing we can do.
yeah, I guess when nothing's going right, and even for the Rockies, they're doing pretty abysmally this season. So I suppose something's got to change, and I don't think it's going to really matter at the end of the day. I think he probably should have been gone a long time ago, and maybe this is just them trying to jumpstart the new era of the franchise as guys hopefully start to come up like Dolander. But I don't know. It's
Get a big star like a Chris Bryant type or something like that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So that's that they really know how to spend their money. And then on the other hand, what you're saying about the Pirates, yeah, they've definitely been a team that not necessarily was predicted to win the NL Central or anything, but should have been better than they are now, considering that there's a lot of promising players on that team. I thought it was interesting when they interviewed Paul Skeens about it. Did you see that? Where he was like,
Yeah, he was like, it should have been done a long time ago.
well, yeah, he said like somebody's got to be held accountable, which is pretty like I think I don't know because obviously Paul Skeens has the personality of a slab of cement. I It was surprising to hear him use wording that was as pointed as that.
Which means he
Because
was not respected, or not maybe not respected, disliked by the clubhouse.
Yeah, which was surprising because I feel like I don't know why I had this premonition, but I swear that um he was like a player's manager kind of guy, but apparently Paul wasn't a big fan of him, and if I'm the Pirates owner and Paul isn't a big fan of anybody, they have to go. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I was actually there for the game. I don't know if it was his first or second game this past Saturday against the Braves, but he got tossed. I think
Shelton
it was
did?
not Shelton, the new guy. In
Oh,
like his
oh, it
it's
was the
like his
bench coach.
first
I forget his name.
yeah, and like his first or second game, somebody was arguing balls and strikes, and he came out and kicked the dirt and yelled a bunch of profanities, and the crowd definitely cheered him on. So, you never know with those things. Again, fire managers, it's not impossible that it starts a streak or a run. So I feel like when you're the Pirates front office and you're not going to spend money because your owner's a cheap little, but um, at that point, you just got to do what you can. Fire a manager, hope it starts something, and hopefully makes Paul a little less mad at you for not building around him.
It's true. Phillies fired their manager, bench coach took over, and they went to the World Series. So you never know what could happen.
Yeah, there you go. A couple other things from going around from the MLB. The Cardinals have now won 8 straight, so they're actually only one game back of the Chicago Cubs for the NL Central. The Cardinals
Currently
are,
watching the Cardinals play right now. They got
oh yeah, because
runners on
they're
second and third already in the second inning. So clearly they're playing better lately.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into players specifically. I know Brendan Donovan has been incredible. Mason Wynn's had a pretty decent season. They just have a lot of guys that I think are like above average. Like when I think of Alec Burleson, obviously like I just said, Brendan Donovan, Mason
Hmm.
Wynn.
I don't
They
know
have
how
a lot of
Contreras is doing
guys.
this year.
Yeah, Contreras has been better. He had a really slow start, but I believe he's been pretty good as of late. Um, the pitching, Sonny Gray is obviously a really solid starting pitcher. So they have guys. I don't know about any superstars. Obviously, Nolan Arenado's not who he used to be, but they're definitely competitive. And this is a nice for them, especially because I think this year was kind of a transition year, and let's see which one of these guys are actually good. So yeah, it's. I really thought the Brewers would be more competitive. Um, or other people in their division. But looks like at least for now, the Cardinals are definitely having a nice start to May, and they could potentially push for the NL Central. I don't think they're gonna sniff the title just because the Cubs look like a very very good team, but you never know with the wild card in this year and who can make it and stuff. So
Hmm. I'd be interested to see if they keep this up. If they keep it up, obviously it would take them off the sellers market, and that's somebody that's a team that certainly had guys, Helsley being one, that people would trade for. That I think fans thought going in would be a team that would be looking to offload at the deadline. If they were to not do that, I think that definitely limits the or shrinks the pool of teams that would be selling it all, and then also teams that have guys that people would be willing to trade for. Because you know, I think there's plenty of teams, Marlins, not, you know, Rockies, want to call them a baseball team, I guess, White Sox that will certainly be trading pieces at the deadline. But for the most part, they don't have a ton of pieces that people are going to be calling for. I think Helsley and Arenado too has been mentioned quite a bit. Would be guys that I think many executives would be making phone calls about. So it'd be interesting to see if they keep this push up, will they be buyers at the deadline, or maybe just least at a minimum just not sellers.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't know enough about the Cardinals front office to know what they're um, looking to do. I think they definitely have the young pieces um, to that are controllable enough where they don't necessarily need to cash in on this season. But then again, like selling is um, obviously the polar opposite of that when you can just kind of sit back and let things play out. So yeah, I mean, as of right now, I feel like you just got to enjoy the ride and really evaluate mid-season. But
Mhm.
another thing we want to talk about, the Athletics are over 500, which is I think quite beyond what anyone would have expected. They obviously came in as a franchise with some promise, with some guys like Brent Rooker, Lawrence Butler, Tyler Soderstrom. Obviously, nobody knew he was going to be as good as he is, but they had young guys, and they're playing well. They're for a team that um, has just been mired in bad PR and controversy, and no one likes their owner, who seemingly is just kind of saying like, "Screw you guys, I'm gonna do what I want," and giving both fingers to the Oakland fan base that has supported him in the franchise for so many years. They're handling the transition well. And I don't know, and I know we want to talk a little bit about the park they're playing in. That's brand new dimensions for them to figure out, and they've managed to acquit themselves pretty well, considering the circumstances.
So I don't follow the exact game lines of the team. Obviously, I know that they had some guys coming in. I am curious how much of this is how well their park is playing. I don't think it's as much as some. I feel like I've seen some stuff online hint that it is, because the Rays are doing the exact same thing, and the Rays are not playing not nearly as well. They are not playing as well, I think, as the Athletics are. And I think purely from a team talent standpoint, they're comparable. So I find it interesting that, and some of this might just be the focus on the Athletics, and it's getting much more attention than the Rays situation was, and everybody's kind of making jokes about the Athletics. It's, oh, they're over 500, and I might be falling victim to that a little bit. But I'd be curious, and there's no way we're ever going to know they're not going to play the Coliseum anymore. I'd be curious if I'd be curious what the record would be had they stayed in Oakland, and this exact same team with this exact same current schedule, how many games they would have won.
Yeah, so we can't look at that, but one thing I was curious about is their pitchers and their ground ball percentage, because obviously, if their staff was inducing a lot of ground balls, that could possibly explain why they're not really being susceptible to the elevation and the small dimensions of that park. But their pitchers are actually fly ball pitchers. Jeffrey Springs, like his ground ball percentage is like 30%. JP Sears is a below average ground ball pitcher. Severino is definitely not a ground ball pitcher. So that's 3/5 of the rotation right there. They're obviously not kind of like power sinker ballers that you've come to expect. That so they're not limiting the fly balls they give up. So um, that's definitely an interesting note. Going back to what you said about the Rays, I think the Rays, I think they're just so different philosophically, and how they run their organizations. That could potentially, I don't the park is probably a factor on some minor level, but I think that they're just so separated in how their teams are constructed, that even if they played in the same park, you would see different results.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I'm positive that playing at Sutter Health or whatever that Sacramento Park is called, um, is definitely boosting some of the power numbers. Like Tyler Soderstrom, I don't think he like his first month he had like 8 or 9 home runs. Like I don't think he's Barry Bonds, but definitely would not pin all of their success on that. I think you're just seeing the product of a team that has a lot of young players that are have something to prove. And when you play in a park that has a terrible clubhouse and definitely not any of the amenities that you're used to seeing from a professional major league baseball club, there's not much else to focus on but baseball. So that could be part of it too, right? Is they at the end of the day they're there to do their job, and when you eliminate all those outside distractions, that you just have a bunch of young guys that are looking to put in work every day and get better for the club. So
And I think um, if they're not playing for the fan base in the same way. A lot of these younger guys are playing for jobs. They're playing for their contract after their rookie contract is up. Um, so that I think that's a driving force. These guys probably want to stay in baseball, and they know they have to work just that little bit extra harder because though they come from the athletics, so they need to put in that extra work to show other organizations come their free agency time that they're serious players and they could, you know, they can hold their own in any team, not just the athletics. I want to shift to unless you have anything else that you wanted to mention on that. I'm sorry.
no, you're all good.
I had a quick note in here about the NL West, because we're on the topic of West teams. Um, I've watched not closely, but I've watched um, the NL West teams. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on the fact that there's three teams within 3 games of the top spot. When I think most people probably thought the Dodgers would be running away with it by now. And it's not saying that they're playing bad baseball at all. 27-14 is really good. But you've got the Padres right behind, and then the Giants are playing really well too. Um, so any one of these teams could sweep the other in a 3-game series and would take over the top spot right now. So I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah. I think the Dodgers, they've entered that status where you don't necessarily need to win 120 major league regular season games. I think they're pretty secure in their standing and that they're going to make the playoffs. And not, I don't think they're mailing it in. But I think Dave Roberts, when he manages to for the 162. He's not managing to win game by game because he's pretty confident, and the team is pretty confident that at the end of the day they're probably going to win minimum 95 games with that roster, and they're going to play some October baseball. So, in regards to the other teams in the NL West, the Padres are still extremely talented. Uh, and you saw it last year. I think out of all of the teams that faced the Dodgers in the playoffs, that the Padres were, I think, the one that gave them the biggest run for their money. And they have a really solid team. Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado. They still have Michael King. They still have Dylan Cease. They have Robert Suarez. They have a talented roster, and they have an elite roster. So that they don't surprise me to see them with one of the best records in baseball. The Giants are interesting because it seems that they routinely have these stretches and seasons where they're one of the best teams in baseball for just out of nowhere, really. I'm looking at their team right now. Their rotation is pretty good. Logan Webb, obviously an ace. Verlander, as a Mets fan, I have some
I
feelings
forgot that
about
he was on
him.
the Giants now.
Yeah. He hasn't been great, but he's been pretty. He hasn't been terrible either. Robbie Reyes had a really nice season. Jordan Hicks hasn't had a great season, but I think I still like him long term. Landon Roop's been pretty solid, and then the lineup. Matt Chapman's had a great start to the year. Jung-Hoo Lee's had a great start to the year. Mike
Hmm.
Yastrzemski's had a great start. Wilmer Flores. So just a lot of guys that, again, I think objectively they're above average major leaguers. I think Matt Chapman. There's people out there that love Matt Chapman a lot more than I do. I think he's a very good major leaguer. I wouldn't necessarily call him elite. But everyone in this lineup's doing their job. They're pitching. They're just a pretty well-rounded team. I could go talk about Ryan Walker and how he's definitely not been good. He like blew the game again yesterday. It drives me crazy. But 90% of this team is doing what is expected of them, and some guys are going well beyond what's expected of them. And this is still with guys like Willie Adames that was signed to be their marquee free agent signing, and definitely hasn't hit the ground running, but he's showing signs of life recently. So I'm interested to see how they continue to do this over a full season. I don't know if I would be scared of them in an October series, but they definitely could play spoiler, I think, in October too, especially some wild card teams. It wouldn't surprise me if they're in the wild card at over a team that I would classify as better. Not maybe not more deserving, but I think there's teams in the NL that are probably better pound for pound than the Giants. The Giants might sneak in over just because they have guys that can get hot at the right time. Lastly, in the NLS, because we're not going to talk about how bad the Rockies are again, the Arizona Diamondbacks are above 500. Um, they're another team that's just pesky. They have a lot of guys that, again, just are solid major leaguers, and they have some elite talent too with Corbin Carroll, Corbin Burns, Ketel Marte. They have guys. I don't think they're anything to write home about either. But the Mets just lost a series to them the other like a week or two ago, so they're definitely there. I'm sick of seeing them play the Mets. They've played them 6 times, and even though they went 3-3 in those 6 matchups, I don't want to see them anymore. Um, I don't think they're an elite team, but they're definitely a team that's going to win games, as I found out firsthand. So the NL West has been it's going to be a I think it will definitely be competitive for the rest of the season. I think eventually you'll start to see that it's a two-horse race, but at least for the next month or so, wouldn't be shocked if these teams are still within 5 games of each other.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't either. I have no thoughts on the Diamondbacks.
Hmm. You said you do or you don't?
I do not.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't think so. I guess
Joke, joke of a franchise.
but I guess one last thing we could talk about regards to the Diamondbacks is the new call up of Jordan Lawler. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Lawler.
Lawler,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So he was believed top 5 in the draft when they took him out of high school. He was in the same class as Marcelo Mayer. Routinely been like a top 30 prospect in baseball. He's had his ups and downs in the minor leagues, but I think when they're calling up, as of right now, when they're calling him up, he had a cameo in 2023, I think I saw, but he has the potential to be a very good player, all-star caliber player. Uh, it remains to be seen where they'll put him long term. Ketel Marte's not going anywhere. Geraldo Perdomo, their shortstop, has done enough, at least this season, to stay as the shortstop. And Eugenio Suarez is going to be just a great player at times when he's a streaky. So I think they'll find ways to get him at bats, but
I'm
it's going to
reading
be
right now on what Lovello said. Their plan was he used the phrasing handful of starts per week, rotating between second, third, and short to give the other guys a day off per week. So I would 3 to 4 starts per week is I think the expectation for him. But no no set spot. He's gonna. I think they're looking for him to be kind of like a super utility guy.
yeah. I'm trying to see what his projections are. They
I
think
don't think he was projected to come up this early.
well, no, I'm
Not.
Fangraphs has some like live projections that they do.
Oh, they do. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So they think he'll hit about 250, um, have an OPS of about 700. So could be worse. They think he'll be about league average, which I mean, for his first season as a cameo, you're really looking just for him to show you signs. I think his first call up wasn't very good at all. Trying to
Mhm.
see MILB. Yeah. So his first start, he batted 129 in 14 games. struck out 32% of the time. So, I mean, I
Not
think for
great.
your first call up, that's pretty standard to struggle out of the gate. So you're really just looking to see him progress and show you that he's learned something in the 2 years that followed, with the expectation that by this time next year, hopefully a spot will be open for him to
Mhm.
kind of take hold. But
I would certainly agree. You're looking, I think by this point you're looking for a serviceable Major League Baseball player.
yeah, yeah, I don't even know who their backups are, honestly, to be honest.
Me
So
neither, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, is there anything else you want to go over?
No, I'm excited to get back to the ballpark tomorrow night with you. It'd be cool if we could do a live episode, but I don't think we have enough of a following to do a live ballpark episode yet.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe not, but
we'll get some pictures up on the social media pages though. If they can get the game in tomorrow. I'm hoping they get the game tomorrow.
yeah, no, it should be good. It should be good for sure. I think I saw the matchup was Sonny Gray versus Luzardo, so that should actually
No,
be
it's
like,
Luzardo.
yeah,
Okay. All
that should
right.
be
That'll
pretty
be a good
fun
game
then.
then.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him
Um,
pitch yet.
Me neither. But I think that'll end our episode for now, episode 4 of Chin Music, a baseball podcast. Hopefully, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we're gonna get back to you guys more regularly. I don't really know what that schedule is gonna look like yet. We still have something that's something we still have to figure out. But we should be hopefully able to do these more often and not kind of go off the grid for 2 weeks at a time. But again, thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.